Could I welcome everyone to the Scrutiny Performance Panel for Education, and particular welcome to Damien Benny, the head teacher in Penrowell, and to Jeff Bowen, the chair of governors. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. And also to Damien Beach and to Nigel Jones, the school improvement advisors. I think it might be useful if we sort of went round the room, so-called virtual room, to introduce ourselves, so that you know who we are and so on. So I kick off. I'm Lyndon Jones. I'm the chair of this panel, and I'm councillor in Bishopston. Sue, do you want to?
Yes, I'm Susan Jones. Hiya, Damien. And I'm the councillor for Gowan.
Good guys, Susan, how are you?
How are you doing?
Hey, Sue, okay?
Good.
Good. Cyril.
Yeah, good afternoon, Dame. I'm Cyril Anderson, councillor for Town Hill Ward up in sunny Swansea.
Steve.
My old home ground.
You're on mute, Steve, for the first time, I think.
Yeah,
Steve,
sorry about
there we
that.
go.
I'm ward councillor for Scrutiny.
Great. Then we've got, who else have we got? We've got Al.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Alexander Roberts. I'm Vice Chair of Governors down at Bishopston Primary, and I'm the co-opted primary school representative for Swansea. Thank you.
Then we've got Linda. We've got the two Lindas. First, Linda Tyler Lloyd.
Hello, I'm Linda Tyler Lloyd. I'm the City Councillor from Wales Ward.
Okay, thanks. Then the other Linda.
Hello, Damien. I'm Linda James. I'm the councillor for Penard Ward.
Okay, David.
Good afternoon, I'm David Halliwell, councillor for Scrutiny.
Okay, and then two people who I should have welcomed earlier when I introduced everyone else, and that was Robert Smith, the cabinet member, and Helen Morgan-Rees, director of education. So they're both here as well. Have I missed anybody out? I know we've got Damien, sorry, the other Damien, Damien Beach and Nigel Jones. Okay.
And
have I missed anyone? Oh, I have, Bev.
Yeah. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Beverly Hopkins, and I'm a councillor for the Lando Ward.
Thanks very much. Okay. To Damien and Jeff. Basically, I'm told that you were sent questions, and basically you're going to answer them on the way through rather than do a presentation, which is great. Is that okay? You've got a list of questions, haven't you?
Yeah. I will say that Damien and myself have discussed it, and we thought as a board of governors to give him some training ready for when he's going to apply for the permanent job in Penrowell. We're in the middle of putting that together to advertise it, that it would be a good experience if he took it through and answered the questions. Most of them we've discussed. Obviously, we've discussed in our governors the way that we work with subcommittees. Our curriculum committee looks after the curriculum and then reports back to the main body. And we thought for this, especially with the difficult times we've been in with COVID, that it would be more advantageous for him to take us through it, because obviously it's been very difficult us doing what we would normally do. And I'd like to fill this in at the beginning. Each of the governors have got a responsibility for certain aspects of the education in the school. Different ones take different departments. I, for instance, look after music. Well, of course, it's been very difficult to go in and have a one-to-one with teachers at the moment. We've tried to keep as much possibly contact on phone or like we are doing now. But obviously, the teachers have been under extreme pressure with the way we've been trying to teach during COVID, and we've tried to allow them to get on with doing what they are best and trying to get our pupils back up to scratch, because our concern as a governing board, as I'm sure we all been, is the well-being of our staff and the well-being of our pupils. And unfortunately, I think Damien will mention during attendance and other things like behaviour, the behaviour has been very, very difficult with trying to sort out during this COVID, because of them losing the regular contact with school. They've come back and seem to have lost discipline, and it's been very, very difficult. So talking with Damien, he will probably talk through what we've discussed, and I'm on hand if you need to ask any other questions.
Great,
if
thanks.
that's okay.
Thank you. I'm running a bit ahead of myself as well, actually, because I need to go through some formal things first.
Yeah.
But we've done all the introductions. Apologies for absence.
We've had one apology from Miles Langstone.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any disclosure of personal and prejudicial interests?
Oh,
No.
yes, sorry.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, just that I have a son working in the education department in Swansea.
Okay. Steve.
Yes, my son works as a teacher with the authority.
Okay.
I think you only need to declare if it's directly relating to the school that that we're talking about. So I think you'll be okay for this one, unless of course your school is mentioned.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Michelle.
Any others? No. Prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. I think that's goes without saying. Minutes and letters. You've got a copy of the minutes. Could I get a proposer that they are a true record of the last meeting?
I'm happy to propose.
There we are.
I'm happy
And
to
second then?
Yes,
I'm happy
Steve.
to second.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then the other one was the letter then to that I sent on behalf of us all to Robert Smith as the cabinet member, and that to note. There are no public questions, so we can now get on to the Damien Benny show. Yeah. Damien, welcome. You're on mute, actually.
Of course I am. That was always going to happen. If I had £1 for every time I hear that I'm on mute in the last 2 years, I could probably retire next year. But no, it's, yeah. Listen, thank you very much for the for the invite. It's nice to be able to come and talk about the hopefully the direction that the school is travelling in and some of the challenges that we're facing to such an interested group of people. So thank you very much for that opportunity. So I've been given the 9 questions, and I've been through them with Jeff Bowen, our chair of governors, and I've also been talking to our Nigel Jones, who's on here today, the Gowton head teacher, who's our support advisor. My worry is that my answers to these might be a little bit long. So if I'm going on too long, I can give shorter versions of answers if needs be. And obviously, I don't know how this works. This is my first time. But if there are any questions after I've answered each of the questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, if that's the appropriate thing to do or not. So
yeah, shall we take questions after each one? Because that will sort of sign that one off. Okay.
Yeah, are we happy with that? I'm more than happy with that.
Right, question 1. You've got a copy of this.
Yeah, so question 1 is about how the school's responded to its most recent Eston inspection findings and recommendations for improvement, including what the school needs to do to improve learner outcomes and to increase the school's capacity to improve in the future. So if we sort of focus on the 3 recommendations, I remember the inspection very well. It's 3.5 years ago now, but it seems like it was only yesterday, although it was in another life in school, it seems, when things were normal. But I remember it well because I was the nominee for the school, and it was a really intense but very, very useful week, actually, seeing how Eston operate and seeing what they make of our school. And I think in general, the recommendations were the right recommendations for the school. I'm preambling now, but I think what you hope when Estyn come in is you hope that Estyn come in and they identify things which you as a school feel actually need to improve, and they don't find other things that you either didn't think needed to be improved or don't think need to be improved. But actually the recommendations, I think, were fine. They were spot on. So recommendation 1 was to improve standards of pupils' literacy and numeracy across the curriculum. So it's a very general recommendation, and it appeared to combine some of our key challenges at the time of the inspection, which was the number of pupils who gain either English or maths, but not both at level 2, which is seen above, the attainment of some girls, the attainment of some FSM pupils, and the number of pupils not achieving at least the level 1 threshold. And actually, it was really pleasing to see this sort of more general recommendation, as opposed to a specific target-driven Key Stage 4 recommendation. So I'm glad they didn't put, improve the number of pupils who are getting level 2 in maths in year 11, because the problem with that is you can end up throwing interventions at year 11, which are not sustainable. And actually, the interventions need to start in school from the first. That's not my dog. The first time they come to school in year 7. And it means we can view it as a whole school system recommendation, rather than trying to quick fix something in year 11. So we've identified through our participation in the comparative judgment writing programme that our pupils' writing, in general, we feel at Penrail isn't as good as it should be. Now, this has very much been exacerbated by COVID school closures, and we've given extensive staff training on teaching writing across the curriculum. And in truth, this has been something we haven't given enough thought to. There's no doubt about that. Pupils write a lot in school and they get better at it, especially as they improve their subject knowledge because they've got more to write about. But we've looked now at how we can improve the teaching of writing in subject-specific ways. And it's actually probably been a real penny drop moment for us in terms of this concept of whole school literacy, because at times literacy and numeracy can seem like a bit of a bolt-on and something that eats into the time taken to teach the subject. But actually teaching writing was and is now seen as we call it disciplinary literacy, getting pupils to think more deeply about the subject content as part of their writing development. And what we've done is we directly aligned this teaching of writing and the development of writing across the curriculum and as pupils progress through school with the implementation of the new curriculum. And it's already bearing fruit. So for instance, last September, not the September just gone now, but September 2020, when our year 7s came to school, we took part in the comparative judgment sort of national programme. And when all the sort of statistics came back, it looked like the current year 7 across UK, all those that, the sort of hundreds of schools that had taken part, the average sort of reading age for year 7 was a year below what it should be, which is worrying. Obviously, they'd had a few months off with COVID, but our year 7s were actually a further year below that national average. So that was really, really troubling. So we knew that teaching writing had to happen across the curriculum, and we couldn't just rely on it happening. But English have really taken this on board, as have lots of other subjects across the curriculum. And just in 12 months, when we've still had school closures, we've taken part in the comparative judgment with the same year group twice more, once in May and once again in September. And they've actually now gone, they're nearly at the sort of expected age for their year group, but they've actually gone way above the national average. So we're already seeing the impact that explicitly teaching writing across the curriculum is having. In terms of maths, numeracy, to be honest, numeracy across the curriculum is pretty well established. The departmental routines for numerical strategies are there. One issue the maths department did identify is the new head of maths came in a few years ago and felt that we set pupils too early. They'd come in year 7 and they'd find themselves in sets. And for some pupils, that was almost a flight path. They'd stay in the sort of same bottom set from year 7 right through to year 11. Of course, some pupils come to us in year 7. They're August babies. They're a whole year behind in terms of the development of some of their peers. So we give them as much time in secondary school to learn the key mathematical concepts before we start setting. And hopefully we'll see the fruits of that in future years. And we're also planning on appointing a cross-curricular literacy and numeracy coordinator from September 2022. So that's recommendation 1. I'll do recommendation 2 and 3, and then I'll pause for any questions. Recommendation 2 was to improve planning to address any weakness in teaching and assessment. And this recommendation combined 3 different elements. It was tightening up on planning, teaching and assessment. So since then, we focused strongly on Rosenshine's principles of instruction to improve our teaching. Every member of staff has been bought a Rosenshine book, one of these here. This is my well-leafed version. And it's each member of staff over the last 4 years has had a key principle So there are 10 Rose and Shine principles. Each member of staff has had one of those 10 principles to focus on as their professional development, and this has been linked with performance management. It's also been the focus of our peer triads. So when, over the last few years, we've had 3 members of staff linked together. They'd each observe each other in the February and March of the year, but they'd be feeding back and looking at exclusively at the Rose and Shine principle that the member of staff has identified and giving feedback on that. The beauty for us of Rose and Shine over the last few years is it's given staff a shared language for describing key aspects of teaching, including things like modelling and scaffolding. And the latter has been particularly useful. We're looking at how we improve differentiation in lessons as well. And a major focus here has also been ensuring that middle leaders identify strengths and weaknesses in teaching and assessment, and then focus their improvement plans on the quality and consistency of these core parts of their job. And from 2018, after the inspection, to March 2020, we've made, I think, really good progress on giving department leaders the training, but also the space and the time to properly evaluate their departments. They're the experts in the departments, and they are the people who can really evaluate the strengths and weaknesses, and actually then, with our support, obviously, do something about it. And the whole school focus on Rose and Shine's principles really helped. Areas for department development would be a focus on inset days and in department meetings. But if I'm honest, since the pandemic hit, this aspect of the work has gone on the back burner. Even this year, heads of department, so heads of maths, English, etc. They're getting used to using internal data again and identifying departmental targets for improvement. But the reality is that this year is about 2 things for departments. The main one is about re-establishing normality and just getting school back to normal and getting our pupils back into the rhythm of school and getting on with their learning, which they've missed out on so much. But also a key priority has been developed in the new curriculum. So heads of department can't do everything, so we've had to prioritise, but they know that they are the key person in terms of identifying the areas for development and for driving departmental improvement. It's often said that the engine room of every school are the middle leaders, and it's certainly true in our place. And then the final recommendation, I finished on question 1, was to improve provision to develop pupils' Welsh language skills in situations other than Welsh lessons. Now, as I said, I was the school nominee for our inspection. And originally we did only have 2 targets, but when they were actually writing the final document, the main Estin inspector just wanted to put this one in. It's you find this on lots of Estin reports, and what the drive is, they want to see more pupils using incidental Welsh in sort of corridors and outside schools, which is a very noble aim, but it's a challenging one for schools because even in Welsh medium schools, pupils don't tend to speak Welsh to each other in the corridors and the playgrounds of the school. But we decided to tackle this recommendation by implementing Siarter Iaith, the Language Charter Initiative. We appointed a Siarter Iaith coordinator who started the role in 2019, and we were beginning to implement our action plan to achieve the Language Charter by developing opportunities for pupils to develop their Welsh language skills outside their Welsh lessons. Now, our Siarter Iaith coordinator has had a temporary internal promotion for 2021-22, and as of yet, we haven't replaced her because she may return to that role. If she doesn't, we will need to replace her. But again, just being brutally honest, the reality is that this priority has moved down the list of priorities since COVID struck, and whilst it is an important recommendation, at this moment in time, with everything that's happened with COVID, it's not. I know it's a recommendation 3, but it's nowhere near our 3rd priority in terms of our school. I'm just being honest. So that's sort of question 1 completed. I don't know if there are any questions before I move on to question 2, or anything you want me to clarify. Okay.
Anyone at all? No, I think you're. Oh yes, there is Al.
Thank you very much for taking us through. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Damien, for taking us through that first question. Yeah, really just in line with some of those recommendations and focusing in on the provision for those entitled to free school meals, which was picked up in the report. I totally get the backdrop, and it was quite some time ago, and the focus of the school, as you just said, is really just trying to get back to some semblance of normal environment. But a focus of this panel is the provision and the attainment for those in receipt of free school meals in that broadband. And I just wanted to ask you how you and the governing body are going to assure us that they're not going to be left behind, and that they are part of that priority work, please.
Yeah, absolutely. we spend quite a bit of our PDG on funding 5 pastoral support officers for each year group. So each year group has got, our pastoral side of Penrail is very, very strong. So every year group has got their own non-teaching pastoral support officer. So they are there to make sure that they encourage pupils to attend. They can resolve any problems. And a lot of their work is with our free school meals pupils who they also mentor. No, we have. You're absolutely right. We're certainly not going to take our eye off the ball in terms of our free school meals pupils. We know who they are. We need to make sure that they're our absolute priority in terms of making sure that they're actually attending school and making sure they've got all the equipment that they need to come in, and we're resolving any problems. We have done a lot of really to do for pupils, and we've tried different strategies, such as taking free school meals pupils books in first, making sure we make sure we include free school meal pupils whenever we're cold calling in the classroom, and all those are really useful. But the absolute key thing that comes through in research is the best thing you can do for your free school meals pupils who might be sort of not attaining as well as their non-FSM pupils. The absolute main thing you can do is make sure that the quality of teaching in the school is as good as it possibly can be, because the impact of good teaching or the impact of bad teaching on pupils who are already behind is so much greater than they are on higher attaining pupils, because of various reasons, cultural capital, etc. in the background. So no, we're very aware of who our pupils are. We're making sure that they get an absolute best quality education that they can. That to me is absolute priority number one in making sure that they achieve.
Great, thank you. Great. Sorry, who's that?
Lyndon, it's me. I don't know whether my hand has gone up. It's Lyndon.
It went up and came back down again. Yeah, Linda, Tyler Lloyd.
Yeah. I'd like to say something, because I think that what I tuned in on is the fact that you're having this sort of dichotomy between the Welsh and the English. Let me explain. My friend is English speaking. Her children were brought up in Pembrokeshire Welsh speaking. The grandchildren are in the Welsh school. But what is concerning them is that apparently they don't learn any English written work until they're 7. And so every night I have to listen in to this child singing Welsh to me on Zoom, because they're encouraging the Welsh, but they're also having to get them writing English. Do you find that there is a difficulty between balancing the Welsh and English?
Well, we're an English medium school, so it's a different challenge for us. So we're an English language school, so all of our pupils, when they learn Welsh, it's very much Welsh as a second language. And it's a challenge because it's hard. They do limited Welsh because of all the other sort of demands on their time in primary schools. What we found over the years. So I've been in Penrail for 10 years, and when I first got there seemed to be a really there seemed to be within the community and the pupils, there seemed to be a really sort of from some quarters, I'm going to generalise now, but there seemed to be quite a sort of anti-Welsh feeling. Welsh was compulsory. It was like it was being foisted upon them. We don't want to study it. It's hard. So the Welsh department, to be fair, have had a real battle over the years to sort of win over hearts and minds. And the new curriculum, actually, they're doing a lot more work on the sort of along with the history department on the sort of history and Welsh, and they're making sure pupils are enjoying the lessons a lot more, as much as they possibly can. And the other thing we've stopped doing in Welsh is we've stopped setting, and believe it or not, that's led to improvements across the board. You don't end up with sort of a difficult sets where they really can't stand it, and it's quite challenging. But I would say, if you asked me 10 years ago, what's the challenge of teaching your Welsh in Penrail, I would say it's a real challenge. It's a battle against some pupils and parents in the community. But I think we're winning that battle, and by and large, we've got a wonderfully enthusiastic Welsh department, and they're winning hearts and minds. But it's not. We don't have the issues that Welsh medium have. They've got to be constantly translating. They're learning it as just as they would a second language, like they learn French, albeit they'll have done more in primary school. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No. Okay. Damien.
Okay, brilliant. So number 2, How is the school addressing the implementation of the new curriculum and the national mission for education? So as a school, I think we've been quite clear about the way we wanted to approach the new curriculum. Now, the weakness of the new curriculum is, and I've said this since the start, is the lack of prescription and the sort of total autonomy given to schools to realise it as they see fit. And I've said since the start, there are 1,600 different ways to get the curriculum right, but there are also 1,600 ways to get it wrong. That's roughly the number of schools we've got in Wales. But you could also say that this weakness is also its greatest strength, because it means that we can realise the new curriculum, we can achieve the 4 purposes with a curriculum designed by taking into account research on the best performing curriculum across the world and what we believe will meet our learners' needs. So in Penrail, we've maintained vertical subjects, and I've taken this a step further by really thinking of developing the subject as a true discipline. Our focus has been on designing
Somebody's gone wrong.
This is where you bring your cat on, Linda, to
Yeah.
This is.
No, Phoebe's got a problem, and he's an expert with technology.
I tell you, these things. Nigel has got his hand up. Nigel.
It looks
I can just come in at that point, because obviously there's a technical issue. Just to say that having visited the school, I've looked at their plans for the curriculum for Wales, and Damien's quite right. It's a messy curriculum. It is a messy curriculum. That's the best way to describe it. And making sense of it is up to individual schools. Hence the idea of 1,600 different ways to get it right or wrong. And what they've tried to do in Penrail is keep the subject disciplines, your history, your geography, etc., but focus more on the core purposes and the sort of pedagogical principles behind those. So that's what they're driving through, which is perfectly normal, because a lot of schools are doing that. Not everyone is doing project work and all this exciting whiz-bang stuff. And I think what they've done is a very sensible, measured approach. And I think time will tell, but I think you might find that they've probably done it the right way in many respects. Now, I'm second guessing what he's saying because he's disappeared, and now he's appeared sideways. So I don't really know what's going on.
He's laying down, I think, Nigel.
I think he's gone for a lie down and a kind of cold bath, I think, just to cool his head, but he's frozen again. But in short, Chair of the group, I think it's fair to say that they're doing what other schools are doing. They're not just going down this. They do have AOLEs, and the departments do meet together, but they haven't broken the school up into AOLEs and structured it as such. But they are undertaking what needs to be done, and they are driving forward, which I think is the right way, which is a really strong focus on the core purposes and the principles around that. And I know for a fact, because I know some of the primary heads in the cluster, they're involved with the school, and there is that chance to move it forward from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3.
I think Damien's back, and I know that they regularly meet with the cluster discussing this going forward. I'm aware of that because, as you know, I'm chair of Castleuchau as well, so I know what's going on between the cluster. So
great, thank you. I think Damien appeared now. He's here.
Yeah.
Damien, are you?
I'm on my phone now. I don't know if you can hear me. For some reason, my computer's just switched itself off. So are you all hear me okay?
You can answer you as well, and you're the right way around. So it's all working out, yeah.
And Nigel has given us a very good summary of what you're doing. So while you were away.
Right. Thank you, Nigel. I appreciate that. So so we can focus on designing a well-sequenced curriculum, which will develop key knowledge and skills by building on previous knowledge and identify the link across subjects. And through that, we can develop the 4 purposes in all of our pupils. So key findings from cognitive science have helped inform the importance of a true progression model. All link meetings between heads of department and the SLT link are focused on curriculum design. They're scripted, so we're all asking the same questions, we're all given the same level of challenge, and they help the head of department think about curriculum design, changes to content, changes to pedagogy, and allow them the opportunity to justify why they're teaching certain subject content, why they're teaching certain subject content over other subject content. So think about something like history. You could teach 1,000 different topics, but we're going to focus on these 7 or 8 over 3 years. Why are those important? Why are we doing in that order? What are the key knowledge and skills that pupils are going to learn? How are they going to achieve the 4 purposes through that subject? And as pupils build their schema in each subject, making links to other subjects were identified. As I've said, they'll develop the 4 purposes and be ready for life after school. And of course, not just in terms of exam results, because it's not all about exam results. And as already mentioned, we also have regular meetings in AOLEs with our cluster colleagues, and that work is interesting, it's fruitful, and it's ongoing. So that's the end of question 2. It's been a roller coaster of questions and everything. But any questions?
Any questions? Only thing I would say, Damien, is obviously, as you mentioned, the new curriculum is not prescriptive, and therefore for some teachers it's their dream, because it's what they've always wanted, and yet you get for others is probably their worst nightmare, because they've been used to working in a prescriptive way, and it's what they've been trained to do and what they've always done. But it really is important that we sort of, I don't know how you're doing this, but take those teachers who fall into that second category with you to ensure that you know, the new curriculum is delivered in a proper way, and as I say, take those with us, because otherwise only the pupils will suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the heart of every decision is ensuring that our pupils get the best possible educational experience.
Great, thank you. Nigel.
Yeah, just to answer your question very quickly, you need a great deal of patience with some people, okay, with some staff, to make sure and constantly refine what you say and refer back to this is the way forward. But I would advise Damien in the future to get a big bucket of patience, because that's what you need. But we will get there, and I think the new curriculum will benefit everyone in the future. Okay.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Right then. Number 3.
Okay. Question 3. I hope I get through this without my phone going off. How are you improving the quality of teaching and learning experience, and what impact is that having on pupil outcomes? So, as mentioned, the introduction of Rosenshine's principles of instruction was a big step forward in terms of staff understanding what effective instruction looked like. We've also prioritised training on staff understanding on how pupils learn, because it's only recent years that we in Penrail, through sort of sharing research in areas like cognitive science, have we really started to have a shared understanding of how pupils, or indeed how anyone, actually learns. And this knowledge has been hugely important, because for far too long, practices in school lessons that would have been praised and held up as best practice can actually be suboptimal in terms of long-term learning. You know, I think back to sort of 10 years ago with some of the sort of the jazz hands lessons that we would observe, which would look great and tick every box, but actually there'd be very little learning going on, and very little long-term learning. But we'd lionize those types of lessons, and we don't do that anymore, because we know how pupils learn. From that, we can then work out how we can best teach so pupils learn as effectively as possible. So now we have a better understanding of how pupils learn and the importance of schema formation, which is where they knit all their knowledge together. We can better implement strategies that support this. So our staff will know what retrieval is, why we do it, and it should be embedded in lessons and homeworks, and is. And in Rosenshine's principles of instruction, daily, weekly, and monthly review is a key principle. The latter is spaced retrieval practice. So when you talk about monthly review, that's just spaced retrieval practice, and that's been a real whole school focus for us for 5 years. So when staff read Rosenshine, they would have had a better understanding of the principles and how they fit in with how pupils learn. So it was really useful for us to do the work on how pupils learn first, and then we could focus on the pedagogy. And when we introduced Rosenshine, for a lot of people, it was like, all right, this actually makes sense now. I understand why we're holding this up as effective instruction, because it really helped pupils learn. And we're currently looking at the 12 pedagogical principles and how they align with Rosenshine's principles, and also the Great Teaching Toolkit review by evidence-based education to revamp our teaching and learning policy. Now, improving teaching requires training and inset time, and it's true that this year is dedicated more to curriculum design and implementation, because September 22 is just around the corner. This will without question be a big focus for next year, even though all staff and departments have a Rosenshine principle as their development objective this year. And a key challenge for us is ensuring new staff have an understanding of how pupils learn and what effective teaching looks like. because we don't want teachers to come into the profession and spend 3 years working out what effective teaching is, teaching and learning is. That we need to be able to say, right, this is good teaching. This will help pupils learn. Off you go. And obviously they can find their own way with that and put their own spin on it. Now we've come a long way in. We've come a long way in 10 years in terms of our sort of staff culture and their willingness to try new things and to change their ways in the classroom. But we still have some way to go. I know I talked to Jeff about this and also spoke to Nigel. When I first came to Penrail, I was really surprised that, and because I'll refer to this later on, but the culture in school was a really professional culture. But people like to keep their doors shut and they like to just get on with things in their own classroom and sort of be left alone. They didn't really want to discuss pedagogy and learning. And we needed to change that culture. So people wanted to talk about teaching. They wanted to talk about what they were trying in their classrooms and what was succeeding. And we've made a lot of progress on there, but it's not a quick fix, and we've still got some work to go on this. And it is also, all of improving teaching is also aligned with other challenges, like what is the school culture, what's behaviour like, what's pupil and staff motivation like, and a host of other variables. And COVID means that we've actually seen a limited impact on the work of the last 5 years. We haven't had proper exam results for the last 2 years, for instance, but I am hopeful that in the near future, we'll see the fruits of our work in here, although there is definite further improvements to make. Pupil voice evidence, though, does show us that the overwhelming majority of pupils feel that they're learning well in class. I could talk about how great our last 2 years of results were, but they were CDGs and centre determined grades and centre assessed grades, and I don't think it's right to point to those to say this is, our results have been so great because of everything we've done over the last 5 years. We all know the reasons that CDGs and centre assessed grades are higher than we'd normally expect, and I think it's right for me to say that they're evidence of improvements in school. Improvements in school will hopefully be seen in the next 3 years worth of exam results. So that's question 3. I don't know if there's any questions.
Any questions at all? No. No, that's great.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so question 4. What are the barriers to the school improving its learner outcomes, including any challenges you experience in implementing the new curriculum? Now, without question, and I'm sure every school across Swansea, across Wales, across the UK would say the same thing, the biggest barrier is the impact of COVID-19. Working in a school with the mitigations and the absences, both from pupils and staff, is a real challenge. I've got to put that front and centre. So much of our time in a day-to-day, now that we're back in school, is spent on COVID-related matters. And that actually makes developing teaching and developing the new curriculum more difficult because time is finite. And I've got to say, in terms of the only way to improve learner outcomes, right? You can throw short-term interventions at Key Stage 4, but if we want to improve learner outcomes, we've got to get our teaching and learning right from the time pupils enter the school on day 0, when they come into us in year 7. But at the moment, COVID has taken up so much of our time. The impact that COVID and school disruption has had on our learners and indeed the community is proven to be a barrier to improving outcomes for some. As well as trying to make up for lost learning time, we are, Jeff Bowen, our Chair of Governors, alluded to it earlier, we are dealing with more challenging behaviour, not from all, of course, but from the minority, and a greater degree of defiance, non-compliance and disaffection that we would never have expected. It's not the norm at the moment in school. Throw in an increase in mental health issues, and there's a lot for us to be dealing with. And this is why our school improvement plan for this year is an interim plan. It's different to how it usually is. It's much slimmed down, and it's got a far greater focus on well-being for pupils and indeed staff, and behaviour management than in previous years. There's been a real drive since COVID disruptions to train staff on how to manage behaviour in their classroom in a calm, consistent, and even scripted way. We have what we call the Penrail way, which is 6 classroom management staples, and this is supplemented with a focus on a scripted art of the consequence, where staff deal with the pupil's behaviour without sort of further inflaming the situation. And we've also developed least invasive intervention, where we're training staff how to manage sort of substandard behaviour in a way that doesn't stop the flow of the lesson and doesn't waste learning time. It may seem really strange for me to be talking about staff dealing with behaviour issues in scripted ways, but actually what you find, and this is very true of our school, I'm sure it's true of every school, how fresh and happy staff are has a huge impact on how well they manage pupil behaviour. There's absolutely no doubt about that. What you find is that as the term goes on and members of staff get more and more tired, when they're dealing with a pupil incident or issue, what you find then is they can lose their temper easily. They can then go what we call off-piste, and they can get into rows and arguments with pupils where they don't need to. So we've given them really simple scripts. So if they're given a pupil a consequence, we've got these sort of 4 steps to follow. Pupils follow them. They're very neutral. They're very factual. And it's just a way of ensuring we don't escalate situations further, because we are dealing with more bad behaviour than we've ever had to deal with, and there's no doubt it's because of everything that COVID has brung. In terms of pupils being off, in terms of missing their routines, etc. And we'll touch on that a bit later. Now, in terms of implementing the new curriculum, time is no doubt an issue. We have lost so much to COVID-19 and the time needed to try to get back to normal. But we've given as much meeting time, inset time, and staff training time as possible. We created for this year an assistant head post for curriculum, teaching and learning. And this has actually been a really key appointment in driving the implementation of the new curriculum. The member of staff has got remission time to read, to attend training, to visit other schools and to undertake research, simplify it, and then communicate to the heads of department in sort of manageable chunks. Now, a year ago, if I'm honest, I would probably say that the changes and the challenges we had in the new curriculum, they seemed huge. 12 months later, particularly with this new person in post, we really do seem to be on target. We made great progress last year, and we're making really good progress this year. We're on target for September 2022 with a far better shared understanding of the pen and rail progression curriculum. We're enjoying working with our cluster of schools, but all of us value our autonomy, and we all have different visions of what curriculum for Wales should look like. But obviously we are working on cross-cluster aspects such as development writing, and I can really see going forward, we will share practice even more, because whilst it's great, for instance, for the primary schools to have autonomy and all to do different things, it's a big workload issue, and I think over time they'll be a better. They'll share their work more. Not that they don't now. There's a lot of shared work, but I think it will become even greater, and that will allow us to work even better as a cluster. Now, I will say, I know I've been really negative about COVID-19, but if I can just give you 30 seconds, there have been some real positives to what's happened to schools over the last 2 years. The first thing is, for a lot of our pupils, the independent learning skills that they've developed have been incredible. They've had to be, most of them had to be on their own, home learning, organising their asynchronous lessons, attending their synchronous lessons, uploading the work. They've developed their digital skills, but they've also developed their independent learning skills. For a lot, it's been fantastic. And it has also really meant that our staff have had to be upskilled in terms of their ICT skills, their digital skills, their confidence using ICT, because they have to. So there has been some real positives, and we take a lot of that forward as we hopefully do get back to normal. So that's my end of question 4. I don't know if there's any questions for that.
Great. Only that, did you have sufficient equipment and so on for children to work from home? Because that is a challenge, because we were starting from a point where all this happened very, very quickly, and everybody was learning on the learning on the hoof.
Yes. In the first lockdown, we mainly delivered packs of learning to pupils who didn't have laptops, and at the same time we tried to get as many laptops out to them. By the time of the second lockdown, so this time last year, when pupils were off pretty much from the middle of December to the end of March, we got about 70 laptops out to pupils. So any and every pupil who didn't have a device, we managed to get 70 out. So that was really pleasing, and it coincided with us as a school going much more. We went for many more live lessons and registration periods. So it was really important that pupils had a house of 3 pupils who all attend our schools. It was really beneficial if they all had their device. So yeah, we gave out, I think, 72 devices in the end, laptops. And that was great. It was really appreciated by the community, and it was a challenge, but it meant that we could get everyone online and no one was left behind.
Yeah, and an achievement as well, actually, for you to do it. So well done. Al, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Damien. Yeah, really pleasing to hear about how bold your vision is to embrace the new curriculum. And I hope you and your colleagues have the confidence to reach out for help and assistance to be part of the wider learning network within Swansea, because everyone else is trying to crack this nut as well with the new curriculum. But I just wondered whether or not what your feelings are in terms of support at the county level, at the local authority, and perhaps the director wants to jump in here, or the cabinet member, to make sure that as people try and work out this conundrum, this puzzle of the new curriculum at this key stage level, people aren't going off on tangents, because there is a danger there, isn't it? As you said, it's part of the weakness. People, everyone's inventing and reinventing this on their own. So how do you think that's going on at the local authority level at the moment? Do you think you have support?
Yeah, I think it's a real privilege to work in Swansea, actually, in Swansea schools, because you've got the Scarsh Head Teachers Network, you've got the Senior Leaders Network. They work incredibly closely together. We've also got calendared heads of department meetings. So our heads of history will meet, our heads of geography will meet. So there's loads of sort of networking opportunities, and there's plenty of opportunities to pair up with a school or a department where you're closely aligned with. So, for instance, our assistant head in charge of curriculum, teaching and learning, she spent the day in Morriston yesterday because, through the Senior Leaders Network, our sort of deputy head and assistant head level, they've worked out that our curriculum vision is very similar. So obviously we're gonna do lots of work with them. But yeah, there are loads of opportunity. We certainly don't feel like we're on our own. I'll come. I have to tell you this. I came from Neath for 13 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed working in Neath. I couldn't believe just the collegiate spirit and in everything in Swansea schools. Even though we're in theory in direct competition with each other, I couldn't get over how closely the schools worked. When I came, I joined the Senior Leaders Network, and I met senior leaders from across other schools. We met sort of 7 or 8 times a year. We had a conference, and I just couldn't believe that they were like, "This is what we're doing in school. It's really successful. This is how we did it." Other authorities might be like, "Right, we're doing brilliant things in school, but don't tell anyone, for goodness sake. Don't tell the school down the road because we're competing with them." It's not like that in Swansea at all. There's just a brilliant collegiate spirit. I don't know how it's there, and it's been there for 10 years. So Swansea is in terms of the schools has got loads of support, loads of networks, and yeah, we certainly don't feel on our own.
Yeah, could I bring in Helen Morgan-Rees and then Linda Tyler-Lloyd? Helen.
Thanks, Jen. I think Damien Beach's report to Scrutiny not so long ago, really talking about curriculum implementation in Swansea, was really helpful. It set the scene in terms of the formal networks we have, Scason being one of them in Swansea. And I think, as Nigel pointed out earlier, that slow burn, that bite-sized chunk approach in terms of the new curriculum is vital. Not moving too quickly or swiftly and regretting it, but being quite pragmatic. So you'll have seen that Swansea's curriculum implementation plan at its inception had a phased approach, and we've tried to adopt that kind of pragmatic, slow burn, not to move too quickly and to do the things that matter first.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Linda, and then Robert Smith.
Right, I just want to make a comment really, because I worked in the education department in Swansea, and I'm going back many years now. You're all too young to remember this, but we used to be forever changing the curriculum. It was always stage 3, and then I'd go in, my dean of the faculty would take me into a room and say, "Look, Linda, help us clear this room because all this is out and the new thing is in." And I was there when we did secondary science, the introduction to the secondary science, and we used to have all these lectures, and they were fantastic. And I just want to know, are you having any sort of training in the university? Do you have visiting lecturers come and show sort of secondary science and do all that sort of planning that we used to do? I'm going back 20 years. I just wondering, has it changed? Is it still in this year, out next year, or is it sort of continuing with progress?
Great, thanks, Linda. I'll bring Robert in because he might be able to touch on some of that. I have to say, I don't know. I'm not often told that I may be too young to remember. So, gosh, that's a first for me. Thank you, Linda. Robert.
Yes, I think Helen has said much of what I was going to say, and I think it is reassuring that, what we've been told as PDCs, as Education Department, and you as Scrutiny, is being reinforced really by what Damien is telling us here this afternoon. And I mean, it's clear that in relation to the new curriculum, yes, Penrowell is developing an approach that's retaining its subjects, departments, and that structure, and implementing a new curriculum framework, using it as a planning document. within its existing structure. And I think that's a perfectly valid approach. And I think it's building on the school's existing strengths and adding those to the potential of the new curriculum. So I think, I've been mightily impressed by what you've presented this afternoon, Damien.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Appreciate that.
Nigel, you were coming in, and then back to.
Just very briefly, just to say that unfortunately, I work with schools outside Swansea and I've done for a number of years, and I really don't think many other authorities can match that collegiate approach you get in Swansea. Certainly Scash, the secondary heads, and I've chaired that, and Simon's chair now, and other people have been chair before, is the envy of most local authorities. And it's that collegiate approach which absolutely makes sure no one's left behind, and we all work together to make sure we all get there. And I think it's something we should be proud of in Swansea. I've only ever worked in Swansea schools, employed in Swansea schools, but I've worked with other schools, and trust me, they give their right arm for what we've got here. And I think Damon summarised that very well. And I think as a bunch of councillors, you should be reassured that we're blessed. And as long as we keep that going, and fine. And in regards to Linda's point, I couldn't really hear what she said, all of it, but I think she said something about, are we changing all the time or something? No, we're not changing all the time. Yeah, every year you have to have change, because that's what education does, doesn't it? You always have something later or other, but there you go. But generally, with the new curriculum, we've been pretty steadfast. We had a target of 2022, which has changed to 23. But I think nearly every school in Swansea, comp school, is ready for 22. So we know what we're doing, and we've got a tried and trusted method of how we work together. And the work with Morriston, I know about the work with Morriston and Penrell, and I think they're matched. And I know Bishop Gore will be joining them, and they'll have a triumphant working together. And I think that's what Swansea does. And my last point is, I'm probably an example of how well Swansea works, in that we use existing head teachers as support advisors, because we work together so well, whereas other authorities parachute in every Tom, Dick and Harry to be advisors who don't necessarily know what they're doing. But should I say that? Yeah, I can. I will say it. Right.
I would say it. Yeah, well done. Jeff.
I'm just coming in here because I have a son that works in another authority, and he cannot believe, when perhaps he's talking to me, of what I say about the collaboration between, the different schools and what we've heard. As a matter of fact, his comment is he gets more help from some of the teachers in Swansea area who he knows and can contact. They give him help for his situation in his authority by far more than he gets from his own. So I take the opportunity, and with Helen here in particular and Rob, to thank the authority and to thank the education department of that and the fellow schools for all that they do. And I'd like the scrutiny panel to know that.
If I can just come in there, Jane, we said a long time ago that we felt the school-to-school support system was the most effective. It was about harnessing the capacity and the expertise that rests in our school and sharing that across the whole school system. That's what we're trying to do, and that's the aim here. And it is gratifying to see evidence of that is beginning to bear fruit. I mean, we can't rest on our laurels here and think that this is a task unfinished. That's not what this is. This is about an ongoing system that has to be sustained and has to be allowed to move forward. So, but what I'm hearing today is certainly reassuring.
Great, thank you. Damien.
Okay, question 5. How are teaching staff engaging with the teaching and learning requirements, including developing their own professional learning? So we focused most of our professional learning on developing the Penrell curriculum and on, as we already mentioned, on classroom management strategies. That's been this year. The aim this year is to have the Year 7 curriculum in place for September as part of a progression model through the end of Year 9. Our focus can then shift to the pedagogy needed to make the new curriculum a success. No matter how good teaching is, without a worthwhile curriculum, it's not going to fulfill its purpose, and our pupils are not going to develop the full purposes. So we focused on the why, then the what, and then we're really going to go back to looking at the how, how we achieve this. Most professional learning has been with heads of department, and this training has cascaded down as departments design the new curriculum. We've made videos on our curriculum vision, what a progression model looks like, and how to develop writing across the curriculum for all staff. But this has been particularly for heads of department. All teaching members of staff have a pedagogical +1 to focus on this year as part of performance management. And as already mentioned many times, this is aligned with Rose and Shine's principles and instructions. Now, we do have a strong recent history of professional learning. So, for instance, in 2017, all staff were bought an educational book of their choice as part of performance management. And if I'm being honest with you, I wasn't going to say this, but when we first said this, quite a few members of staff, well, I haven't got time to read a book about education. I'm too busy. But actually, it was a brilliant idea by Alan Tootle, our head teacher at the time. You know, we stuck with it. We got everybody a book, and actually, it was quite transformational in how they sort of viewed educational research and ideas in education. So the following year, we bought all members of staff the Rose and Shine book, and we slowly started to change the culture where staff were more and more interested in research and wanted to read up more about sort of teaching and learning. We've had one of our members of staff has presented at 4 research ed conferences across the UK, and his trialling of spacing and retrieval has informed wider staff development and has led to concrete implementation across the school. Staff have been well trained and were able to develop their digital and pedagogical skills to deliver live lessons and asynchronous lessons over school lockdowns, as mentioned. However, I think it is fair to say, and it's right to say, that our professional learning offer to staff is an area that has not progressed as much as it could have during the last few years. You know, it might be partly down to COVID, but to me, this is an area that we need further development. As I'm acting head teacher at the moment, and if I get the job permanently, developing our professional learning offer for all of our staff, so we can better develop all of them, will be my #1 priority. Because a school is only as good as its staff. Recruitment is becoming more and more challenging, and we must develop our staff as best we can so that they're able to give the very best for our pupils, which of course is their entitlement. We are working, as already mentioned, towards a shift in school culture where everyone embraces the fact that they've got more to learn and can get better. And we're working on that shift so members of staff take ownership of their own professional learning. They have time for deliberate practice and have useful feedback on their learning. So we've made some progress, but with this one, there is still some way to go. And that's the end of that one, if there's any questions.
Great. Linda, you've got your hand up, or is that historical? It's historical. Sue Jones.
Thank you, Lyndon. I note that there's a huge amount of work that you've done with staff, and look to how you are dealing with the well-being of your staff. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. In like our #1 priority for this year, the #1 priority, the improvement plan is well-being for pupils and for staff. Staff well-being is absolutely vital. From a purely operational perspective, if we don't look after our staff well, they're not going to do a good job in our classroom for our pupils. So that's fundamentally the most important thing. It's also important to look after them because they're fellow human beings. And like I've already mentioned, recruitment is becoming more and more challenging. If we don't look after our staff and we don't treat them well, they'll go elsewhere where they're treated better. So we do things like, so for instance, we offer yoga sessions to our staff. You know, we allow them late starts to insets, and you know, we collapse lunch, and all of that is great. But the most important thing for staff well-being is making sure that the policies that we have in school, our expectations in terms of marking, etc., how we centralise the tensions. It's the key thing for staff well-being is how well we manage their workload, and it's not easy, but that is the #1 priority. Is making sure that our marking policy, our behaviour policy, is as easy to implement as it possibly can, and still obviously has a positive impact on our pupils. I had a great. I will mention this later, but Nigel Jones is I've already mentioned he's our support advisor, and when he came to do our core visit in autumn, he shared an idea that they've got in Gowton School, which is basically is to do with flexible working and PPAs, and we've introduced it in our school. And staff have been absolutely delighted. They feel that they're really valued. They feel that they're treated really well, and it's given us a huge boost in morale. It's given us a huge boost in well-being. And when you treat staff well, and they feel well looked after, they'll go that extra mile for you. I don't particularly like that term, because we don't need staff to go the extra mile. We just need staff to do their jobs to the very best of their ability, and then go home to their families and enjoy their time. But if we look after staff, staff will look after. They'll do the best possible job. They'll appreciate it, and yeah, they'll work as hard as they possibly can, and for the benefit of our pupils. So when we talk about, I would say to all the councillors, when you hear teachers and school leaders talk about staff well-being, it's vitally important on two levels. Number one, we're dealing with human beings, and number two, if we don't look after them, they'll go elsewhere, and they won't do the best possible job for our pupils. So that's a great question, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you. Right, number 6.
Okay, number 6. What is the school doing to improve levels of pupil attendance and to minimise school exclusions? Now, even before the pandemic hit, attendance was a priority for the school. We've got very well established routines for managing detention, and there are clear roles and responsibilities for the attendance manager. We've got a dedicated attendance manager. We've got, as we said, 5 pastoral support officers, 1 for each year group. And obviously we've got, as I said, obviously we've got 5 of those. And we've also got an education, as all schools have got an education welfare officer, the EWO, and they work together very, very closely. Now, in 2019, we looked at researching how schools across Swansea, across the UK and further afield had successfully tackled and improved attendance, because we dropped the quartile 3, and what we were finding, it was really difficult. Attendance is a tough nut to crack with some pupils and some families. But we wanted it to increase our percentage, so we looked at what other schools have done. What have other schools done that have been successful? And it seemed from our research that the group of students where the greatest chances of improving their attendance are the pupils sort of between 87% and 92% attendance. So these are the pupils that seem to take off days sort of here and there. And by researching what other schools had trialled successfully, we identified a top 10 of pupils that the year team pastoral support officer would work with and monitor for a period of time. So 10 pupils whose attendance in each year group was between 87 and 92%. So these are the pupils that the EWO, for instance, wouldn't be working with, making sure we weren't overlap. And what we did, we sent home what we call Harvard letters. Whether these originated in Harvard, I don't know, but we sent them to 50 pupils, the parents, carers, and the letters are designed to show parents, carers that while they may think their child's attendance is acceptable, it's actually comfortably below the average of their peers and will impact on their academic attainment. And the letter is really simple. It's got a vertical bar chart with the number of days that their child has missed that year in red, compared to the average numbers, the number of days missed by an average pupil in the same year group in green. So what you'd have is you'd have a big red bar and a small green bar. And it's something really simple, but those colours really helped in getting the message across, which was quite stark. And after sending the letters home, every time one of those pupils was off, the pastoral support officer would be the first point of contact. They'd phone home and they'd have a scripted conversation with the parents, so we were all doing the same thing. And this was actually proven really effective. I was delighted at how it was going. And we were really changing the habit of a number of our pupils. And then, of course, COVID struck. And since then, the priority of the school has been to implement the appropriate mitigations in schools so people are safe, but also so that they feel safe. But pastoral and attendance team have been, the switch has been to ensuring pupils and parents understand the ever-changing self-isolation rules so pupils can be in school wherever possible. But really, the focus for our pastoral teams have been on working closely with families where, for a variety of reasons, pupils are not wanting to return to school or are reluctant to return to school or are anxious about returning to school. So we've had to offer, temporary reduced timetables. We've got hybrid home learning in school timetables for a minority of pupils, just to try to get them engaged in education again. And it has been a significant challenge. And of course, this year we have the absences on top of that due to COVID isolations for pupils as well as staff. It's quite a stark figure, but over a quarter of our pupils have been off school since September to the middle of December with COVID. So a quarter of our pupils have been off for obviously at least 7 days because of having COVID. Despite these challenges, though, our attendance has sort of consistently been around the sort of 87% mark, which actually, in the grand scheme of things, I'm actually quite pleased with. It'll be interesting when we do get back to normal, and we're aiming for the mythical 95. It's not mythical, please don't minute that, but we're aiming for 95. But it's tough to get there. But at the moment, eight with all our challenges, with 20, 30, 40 pupils off every day with COVID, with some pupils really reluctant to come to school, 87%, I think, is a pleasing figure at this time. Each year group's pastoral support officer is engaging the pupils and families. That's absolutely key, and working with the EWO to get individual pupils back into school. You know, most days our EWO or one of our pastoral team will be out visiting pupils and families, you know, trying to re-engage them in education and work out how we can get them back to school. In terms of exclusions, now as a school, we are very, very keen on reducing the number of exclusions that we have. The reality is that our exclusion figures have increased since COVID. There's no doubt in that. The lockdown and school closures have meant that we're now dealing with some pupils being more disaffected, angry, frustrated than they would have been in normal years. And we're also still dealing with some pupils that are finding it hard to adjust to sort of clear routines, clear expectations and boundaries after so long at home and maybe being on their own and away from school. Having said that, it is a minority, because actually for most of our pupils, the return to routine, structure and predictability is just what they were missing. Now, we do run an inclusion room in school where some pupils can work in during the day for the whole day rather than go to lessons, but that's an alternative to exclusions. But the bottom line is we do have red lines in school, and we always try to understand why we might be getting certain behaviours, but the fact is that certain behaviours, they just have to result in exclusions. It's necessary to reinforce the social norms and the culture of the school. We do work with families, work with pupils who are struggling to manage their behaviour. We make referrals to other services to help pupils that are struggling in school. As we said, we've got 5 pastoral support officers who don't teach with each year groups, who are there to mentor, who can spend time with these pupils and to hope to improve their behaviour. We work with the behaviour support team from the authority. And in September 2022, we're hoping to launch a bespoke on-site alternative provision. Most schools have got this. We need to get this, which will cater for some of our pupils most at risk of exclusion. And it's hoped that this will help some of the more disaffected pupils experience a curriculum that they value. So just to finish off on that, my chair of governors would never say to me, you have to get exclusions down, you know, by any means necessary, stop excluding pupils, you know, massage the figures. Jeff would never say that. And any chair of governors that were asked that, I would hope the head teacher would say, well, I'm not going to do that, because everybody across Swansea wants to see exclusions come down, but it'll come down when people's behaviour improves. And at the moment, we're seeing a spike in poor and challenging behaviour, and we've got a spike in exclusions. But even things like we talked about the Penrail Way and trying to deal with things, you know, calm and consistently unscripted. All of those things are mitigations to try to minimise disruptions, to minimise things escalating, and to minimise exclusions. But I've just got to be really clear that since we've had COVID, behaviour in school is challenging. Behaviour in my school at the moment is very challenging. And speaking to colleagues across Swansea, I think, you know, we're not the only school seeing this. But I'm sure the authority want exclusions to come down, but it needs to come down by the behaviour in school improving, not just you know. And I'm not saying this will ever happen, but it's important that we don't put pressure on schools to artificially decrease exclusions, to let more and more things go, because actually the culture of the school will get worse, and you'll find actually in a year's time you might have double your exclusions because the culture and ethos of the school has just changed. It's a horrible thing to have to exclude pupils even for a day, but at the moment it's a necessary evil. It's a part of our armoury, and it is a way of reinforcing social norms of what we do and don't accept in Penrail School and indeed across the authority. It's not an easy one, that. But I don't know if there are any questions.
One, Linda Tyler Lloyd. You're on mute, Linda.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It's again, it's a comment really. But I get my hair cut every 6 weeks. And my hairdresser, I say that because my hairdresser, you know what it's like in hairdressers, my hairdresser chats, and she's got 2 daughters. She's got a thin daughter and a plumpish daughter. And apparently over the last few months, the plumpish daughter has been bullied at school. And this has been a real worry to her. And every time I go in, I say, how is the daughter now? And apparently the sort of, the thing that has actually stopped this bullying is the fact, and I don't know whether you do this sort of thing in your school. She is a secondary school pupil. Apparently, they've tried everything in the school and it's still going on, but they had a sort of a talking group and they had people, you know, making comments. And one of the boys said that he was annoyed about the fact that this girl was being bullied and that he didn't like to see it. And since that comment was made, it stopped. So she was, the last time I went, she was thrilled, because I don't know whether you do that sort of thing, because it seems as if the class, the sort of peer group now has started to defend her. So I just want to say that that's a positive thing, I think.
Great, thank you. Damien.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Jones. Yeah, it's a great comment, and it's great to hear that if someone's having a hard time and things improve, because you know that sort of experience can be absolutely transformational in terms of her school experience. Yeah, we you know, bullying is a difficult one in school, because you'll often get conflict between pupils, and you know, it can be two friends who fall out and parents on the phone, you know, they're being bullied, and things are rarely black and white. Sometimes they are, but yeah, you know, bullying happens, and there are different ways of dealing with it. Sometimes it can be, you can actually get the person being bullied and the person who's bullying them into a room and have a sort of restorative conversation. Sometimes that works, but again, we're lucky that we've got 5 pastoral support officers. This is a big part of their job, is dealing with pupils, talking to pupils, trying to resolve that conflict. You know, we just want our pupils to be kind to each other. It's what we want our ethos of our school to be, about being respectful and safe and kind. And you know, pupils are far more accommodating, and they're more tolerant of things than maybe pupils were 20 years ago. But they can still be incredibly unkind to each other. Unpicking it is not always easy. But yeah, we've got lots of strategies. And what I hope we show parents that we do is that we take it seriously, and we try to deal with it as best we can. It's what we often find, though. It's rarely black and white. And it's often quite complicated. But it's basically, we solve bullying by any means necessary, as the old Malcolm X expression. Not literally by any means necessary, but there are lots of strands. There are lots of ways of doing it. Often depends on the personalities of the pupils involved. But we're lucky we've got a very experienced pastoral team who are very, very good at that. That's it. It's lovely to hear that.
Great, thank you. Jeff.
I'm coming in to support Damien, really, because obviously the Board of Governors' attention is always on attendance and, of course, on exclusions. But also bearing in mind on the exclusions is that we have got to fulfill the policy, because otherwise that has an effect on the well-being of our staff as well. If we allow things to go on and not give the pupil an exclusion for the day, or sometimes, unfortunately, we've had to exclude a pupil permanently because of the behaviour. It's not something I look forward to have to sit there, but we've also, and this is Damien is well aware of, the governing board has also got to really consider all members of staff in Penrose School, and youngsters have got to learn that. And coming back to the bullying, I think one of the most, yes, I do get approached, obviously, as any chair of governors do, by parents about bullying, and one of the worst parts that seem the parents come to you is the verbal bullying, because nobody sees it, and it's so difficult to deal with. The school don't really know what's going on, because it's just what can be said, and it can be so harmful and so hurtful. And yeah, it's I support Damien and all that he has said, and as I said at the beginning, it has been this last, definitely this last 2 years. And we've also seen, to a degree, in the primary schools, where behaviour from primary children is not like it was before them being at home, because they've lost the discipline of being in the school. So that's all I wanted to add.
Good, valid point, Jeff. Robert.
Yeah, and I think, again, I'd like to thank Damien for being so open with us this afternoon about the issues with attendance, with behaviour, and Jeff's referred to bullying there as well. We don't want to. We as an authority are aware of the situation. We're trying to collect information across the whole of Swansea, and I think, you know, the more we know about incidents, the more we know about the level of the issue, and also what is the effective practice in dealing with it. The more we'll be able to put the support in across all schools across the whole of Swansea, because, you know, this isn't an issue for one school. And indeed, it's not an issue that's confined to Swansea by any extent. Now, there are things the schools can do. There are things that the council can do. But I think, you know, this is a much wider problem. And, you know, to think that the education system alone is going to resolve all of these issues on its own, I think is not the reality. You know, this is an issue that has come, it's part of society. It's been exacerbated by COVID, and I think, you know, we need a joined up approach moving forward, in which we've all got a role to play. But again, you know, thank you, Damien, for being so open about the situation in your own school.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Smith.
Great.
Okay.
Oh, Helen has come in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Back to you, Damien. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Just to touch upon the positive behaviour policy we have in Swansea. Obviously, we've circulated that to schools just before Christmas and again at the start of this new term. But I guess the strength of any policy really is that it reflects practice and that it's strong enough to reflect the current need in schools. So always keen to work in partnership with schools to strengthen and build upon that positive behaviour policy. So would welcome that kind of co-production to strengthen that policy if required.
Great, thank you. Damien.
Okay, question 7 is a bit shorter, you might be glad to know. What are the governing body's priorities and how are they being addressed? The main priority, I think Jeff's already said it, but the main priority of the governing body at the moment is without question pupil and indeed staff well-being, particularly as we get through the pandemic and working hard to get school back to normal. And that's why both of these take priority in the current school improvement plan, what we call our SIP. That is without doubt the main priority of our governors at this current time. To be honest with you, it's probably the main priority of our governors for the last 10 years. You know, it's a real top priority that our pupils are happy, they're well looked after and they're safe. And we've got staff that enjoy coming to work at Penrail and they can therefore do the best possible job for the pupils. But we also have 4 subcommittees and each subcommittee's got their own priorities. And again, these are addressed in the school improvement plan. All priorities of the governing body have improving the experiences of Penrail pupils at their very heart. The finance committee's priorities is that the school uses its huge budget wisely to give our pupils a rounded quality education experience. The curriculum committee's priorities are the new curriculum and the impact that teaching has on pupil outcomes. The personnel committee's priorities are recruiting and retaining the best staff, attendance and reducing exclusions. And the community and property committee's priority is site development to allow all those things to happen. And of course, progress is discussed in the subcommittee meetings and then fed back to the wider governing body in our sort of regular meetings. So a bit of a shorter one there. I don't know if there's any questions.
No, shall we go on to the next one then? Thanks. Question 8.
Okay, number 8. How does the school seek and use best practice, including sharing your good practice across schools? So over the last few years, we've pushed educational reading and educational research across our staff body, and being engaged in educational research is really important. I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent at the moment. Anyone who's been involved in education for any length of time will know all the sort of false dawns, the snake oil that we've been sold over the years. I think of learning styles and multiple intelligences. So whenever you're sort of introducing new things into your school, there is a case of, oh, here we go again. So it's really important that staff become sort of research savvy so that they can see that anything we're trying to implement in school that's new actually has got a really strong evidence base. And, this is the best bets in terms of improving our practice. So we've really pushed educational reading and educational research across our staff body. Not easy when a lot of teachers are so busy. And a small number of colleagues attended Research Ed Cymru in 2020 on a Saturday, which shows their commitment to getting engaged in research and having that impact in Penrail. We've got a growing number of staff that are active on Twitter and read educational books and blogs for a hobby. And this culture is slowly but surely growing in school. But teaching is a busy job. If someone's teaching 45 hours out of 50 over a fortnight, it's very difficult for them to spend the time, reading more and more about the job. So there are key staff in school that will read educational research and disseminate to staff in more manageable chunks of what that might look like in the classroom. In 2021, 3 members of the SLT read, I think we read about 4 educational books on curriculum and curriculum design, and this really helped sharpen our thinking on our curriculum vision. This has been discussed and modelled during inset days and link meetings. Link meetings about curriculum are scripted to ensure that best practice in curriculum design is discussed and implemented. Exemplar materials from different departments have been shared across the school, so each head of department understands what a progression of model looks like in, for example, science, or what development of vocabulary looks like in, for example, maths. All meeting time, whether it's link meetings, department meetings, head of department meetings, have got agendas for strategic development as opposed to operational. We've made sure that all of our meetings are not things that can be shared over emails, but are actually to do with moving the school forward, moving curriculum forward, moving teaching forward. We've shared much of our developments in recent years with other senior leaders from across Swansea in the Senior Leaders Network, which is now called SCASA. In the last 4 years, for instance, we've shared lesson observation changes, including removing grading. I think we're probably the first school in Swansea to remove SLT lesson observation gradings, which had a really positive impact in our school. And I know a lot of Swansea schools were thinking of it at the time, and a lot of them have done that and have gone far more development lesson observation since that. Also, we've shared how we're trying to develop our school culture. We've shared our whole school approach to revision, and we've also shared our embedding, spacing and retrieval across the school. And the latter is also what's been shared in 4 recent research-ed conferences. Our focus, as I said, is more on development of curriculum this year rather than development of teaching, but the balance will definitely change next year. We do need to develop how we share best practice, but it's got to be based on research and what is effective. But that will be part of our revamped professional learning offer. Using best practice exemplars across the school, will be a key part of a new professional learning offer for staff, and this will really help involving the culture at Penrail. So as I've mentioned, we've come a long way, but there is still some way to go.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Pleased to know there aren't. So I think you've answered the number 9, but go for it.
Yeah, look, number 9 is a dream question. How well have I been supported by the local authority and the school improvement service? One word: superbly. As a new, albeit acting head teacher, I've got an excellent support network in place. So the local authority appointed Gareth Rees, who's Pontedale as head teacher, as my mentor. We've met 3 times already, and each meeting was incredibly useful. He's only a few years ahead of me. He's been head in Bond for about 3 years now. So he can really help me with some of the challenges that I'm facing, because he only faced them a couple of years ago. So that relationship has been brilliant and really helpful. And, Gareth is head teacher of a school that's 5 minutes up the road, but Gareth will share anything and everything with me in terms of what he's developing with his school. So I can't speak highly enough of that provision. I've also had excellent training from the local authority on attendance and disciplinary issues, which is sort of new things for me. My dealings with the local authority officers in terms of HR, payroll, finances have been excellent. People are always there at the end of an email to answer questions. My questions always get answered, and I know that help and support is there, if and when I need it. Nigel Jones, who is here today, the government head teacher, is our support advisor, and the core visit that he did in autumn was absolutely invaluable in terms of helping me identify strengths and areas for development. But not only that, we discussed real concrete steps for improvement, long-term improvement, but also sort of things we can improve instantly. And this is the value of having an established and experienced head teacher as our support advisor. But I've got to say, I don't embarrass him, but more than that, Nigel Jones is now someone that I can and do contact with any problems or queries, and he's always on the end of a phone. And he shared his mobile number with me, and I can text him, I can ring him, and at the drop of a hat, he's there to answer any questions. I think it speaks volumes that Penrail is sort of 5 miles, a couple of miles away from Bont. I get amazing help from their head teacher, a couple of miles from Gowerton, and I get, incredible help from those head teachers. In theory, we're competing for pupils. The reality is their help has been just outstanding. I couldn't speak highly enough of both of them. I spoke to Nigel, was it 2 or 3 times last week, Nigel, about some different things, some different queries I had. He's answering his phone straight away, and he's helping me. It's brilliant. And that's a true support advisor, isn't it? That's someone who comes in and will actually support you in terms of settling as a head teacher, but also moving the school forward, which is what we want. It's true support, isn't it? And this support is replicated in our monthly head teacher SCASH meetings. You know, people just they want to share. It's open, it's collegiate, it's supportive. We also have great support from Lisa Collins as a school with respect to safeguarding and people's concerns. And you know, I've had great dealings with Carmen Newman and James Craven in the school support service. Our local authority governors also provide support and real challenge, and a great conduit to the local authority. And you know, I'm also fortunate in my position to have a very supportive chair of governors who I can and do discuss many issues with him. And it's reassuring to know that you know, I've got that support and confidence and experience to fall back on whenever it's needed, which, you know, is, you know, I rely on Jeff, and I bounce things off Jeff quite a lot. So in terms of my support, you know, I'm a new head teacher. I've only been in the role since September, but I don't feel lost. I don't feel on my own. There are 3 or 4 people I can talk to at the drop of a hat. And I know that anything I want answered in local authority in terms of payroll or HR or having to deal with early retirement through ill health, support I've had off the local authority has been superb. You know, I worked in East Talbot for 13 years. I loved it. I've worked in Swansea for 10 years. I couldn't imagine going to work for another educational authority because you know, of the support and just the collegiate spirit that we get across the school. But the support from the local authority has been superb.
Great, thank you. Well, that's good to know, and that's excellent. Thank you. Any questions or any points anybody would like to put to Damien? No, great. Al, you did say you wanted to mention something, but
thank you, Chair. No, I think I covered that question.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yes, thank you very much.
That's great. Well, I can see in the meantime, Helen and Jeff have put their hands up. So, Helen first.
Thanks, Chair. Just to convey my sincere thanks really to Damien and to Jeff for their time and commitment and preparation coming here in front of scrutiny. I'm really proud to have heard what you've said. You've said it with energy and enthusiasm. Long may it last, Damien. Can I also thank Nigel and Damien Beach really for their input and support to the school. Very grateful to you both. So diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Jeff.
All I want to say is a big thank you to the scrutiny panel for allowing Damien to take the lead this afternoon, because as I said at the beginning, I know he's going to apply for the permanent headship in Penrose, and I thought this would give him a very good opportunity to speak and get himself ready for that event. So thank you for allowing that and just letting me come in at the odd occasion just to support him. Thank you very much to the whole panel.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Robert.
Yes, I think, you know, I've expressed my thanks in the comments to individual questions. So again, you know, thank you for coming and giving an open account of what's happening in Penrose, and I think that there's very positive overall messages coming out, which I think is reassuring for us as an education authority as well. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Smith. Great, Cyril.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Damien, well done on answering them questions. You're straight, you're honest, and as Jeff have said, go for that goal of headship, and I'm sure you will do our children a great deal of service. Thank you for your honesty and well done.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's a lovely comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyril. What I was going to say was, you know, can I thank you and you know, Damien and Jeff for coming along this evening, and Damien, if you can go back and thank the teachers at the school for the work that they've done. And really and yourself over what has been a pretty difficult period with COVID. You were learning on the hoof, and you know, obviously have done a great job. Also to thank you for the really thorough and honest assessment that you've given of the school and your plans as well. So thank you and good luck for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Jones, and yeah, look, thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. It's great to speak to people who are so interested in you know, in education. So it's been a real privilege this afternoon. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Sorry, I can see Linda's now put her hand up, and then we'll get on with the. You can then disappear, and if you want to, we've just got one item on the agenda afterwards. Linda. You're on mute. On mute.
Yeah. I just want to say that all the teachers, all the heads, every school that we've examined over the last couple of years that I've been on this education scrutiny committee, they've all been so good. And I just want to say that I think that we could be proud of overall all the education that we've got in Swansea. I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to see this, so that when people speak to me, my ears are flapping and I think, oh, I know where to go to for that. If you've got a problem there, we go to Helen or we go here. But I think that the standard is really high, as you've just said this afternoon. So thank you for coming. That's all.
Great. So thank you, Damien and Jeff, and thank you, as I say, for joining.
Thank you all. All right.
And you can escape now if you want, and but thank you.
I shall. Good night.
We've got one item left on the agenda, and that is the work programme.
Hello, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. And that's the work programme. And hopefully we've got Michelle coming in.
Yeah.
The next meeting is on the 14th of February, and that's about the annual budget. And I'm told that the meeting on the 24th of March has been brought forward to the 15th of March. Okay, but any other queries on that?
Nothing else to.
Okay, great. We've got a couple of hands up. It's Mike Day. Mike.
Thank you, Lyndon. I just wondered, it may not be possible for this particular session, but it would be really good to be able to look at the issue of the support for asylum seekers and refugee children, particularly during the period of COVID. I don't know whether it would be possible to include something within the work programme, maybe just a feedback. I don't know if Robert and Helen think that would be possible, possibly just a report.
Helen.
Yes, certainly that's possible. That's within the realms of possibility. Councillor Day, no problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that would need, well, we can either add it on the 14th or the 15th of March, then 14th of Feb or 15th of March. So we look at what we can do with that. Great, thank you, Mike, for bringing that up, because it is an important issue. Linda, is this historical, or you're on mute?
Sorry, this hand won't come down. Sorry about that.
Right, okay. Al.
Yes, just at the mention of the budget coming up and a budget report, just as I mentioned previously, I wonder whether or not as a panel, we can look at the impact of the projected increases of energy costs to schools and whether or not that's going to be factored into the budget report, please. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Helen.
Yes, we remembered, Councillor Roberts, that question, and we have factored it into our slides that we present to you on the 14th. And indeed, I'm just wondering, a question for Michelle, really, whether it's possible that we could receive questions in advance. We have produced a bilingual set of slides to run you through the budget, like we did last year. So, if there's time for you to consider them before the scrutiny, so we can have questions in advance, but happy to see questions on the day as well.
Great, thank you very much, Helen, and thank you. Al, no, that's it. I think that's it. Could I thank you all for attending? And as I say, I would normally say safe journey home, but I don't think you'd be going too far. But thank you all very much for attending, and I think quite an interesting, very interesting meeting actually, and a really good insight into what was going on and how the school are progressing. So thank you all, and thank Michelle for working, getting the background for this meeting together.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Very good meeting. Yeah, thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Bye, everyone.